Yep, I'm recording.
Awesome.
Thank you.
All right.
Yep.
I'll be on my best behavior now. So yeah, it's really just, drilling into all components of your SAP environment and really feeding your SAP experts the information and the data and the intelligence, the analytics that you guys need to do your jobs faster and better. And through these insights, is really designed to help kind of increase productivity. It's going to speed up your testing cycles. It's going to bring down production defects, and you can even use a lot of these insights for governance controls like quality gates and things like that. But when you look at Live Compare from a 30,000 foot level, from a bird's eye view, these are all the different kinds of analytics and insights and functionality that come with Live Compare. And it's not like you need to implement each one of these boxes separately. You don't need to license each one of these separately. This is Live Compare is an all-in-one DevOps intelligence platform. You get all these analytics, all these insights, all this intelligence when you license the product. So it's one single installation and you get everything that you see here. Now, there's a lot of different functionality that we can talk about. Obviously the most popular thing is this change impact analysis. So anytime you make a change to your SAP environment, whether that's your daily and weekly transports or your major and minor change releases that you do, or if they're big upgrades, right? Support packs or enhancement packs or S4 upgrades, Live Compare can analyze all of those kinds of changes and tell you exactly what in production is going to be impacted and tell you precisely what you would need to test. So instead of trying to go out and test everything every time you make a change, we can actually pinpoint and target exactly what you would need to test. And by doing that, we'll be able to cut down your ongoing testing scope upwards of around 85% is typically what we see. And that will allow you to be able to release a lot faster and go a lot quicker. We can also integrate with your existing test repository. So no matter if you have our sister product with Tosca or ECT, or if you have ALM or Worksoft Certify, we can integrate with that test repository. And based on the impact, we can actually tell you what test cases that you would need to run and also tell you where you have test gaps. So we can give you your test coverage. Beyond sort of the change impact analysis and the test coverage, there's a lot of other things that come with Live Compare that I'll kind of just touch on real quick. SAP will be the first ones to tell you that the most expensive part of your SAP implementation is your custom code. So just having a really good handle and understanding of how much custom code you have and which application areas are customized the most, which users are utilizing your custom code. What does your custom code trending look like? Are you increasing custom code over time, or is it decreasing? Or just looking in production and telling you all the custom code that you have in production today that's not being used, right? So we can help you optimize and reduce the amount of custom code that you have in your environment. So Live Compare is a tremendous tool for kind of giving you continuous insights into your custom code, help you better manage and maintain your custom code. Also, another key element to a healthy SAP environment is to make sure that your systems stay in sync. You want to make sure that your code and your configuration and your data is all in sync between dev, QA, and prod, right? Or if you have like an N+1 landscape environment, you have a project landscape that runs in parallel with your production landscape, making sure that those environments stay in sync so that when you do your merges, you're not having object collisions and object overlays and things like that. So it's really good for N+1 landscape management as well. So Live Compare, hence the name Live Compare, we can do real-time mass volume comparisons of code, config, data, security objects, whatever you want between any systems and help you stay in sync.
Just taking a look at the slide here and thinking about your particular SAP landscape, what does that look like for you guys?
We have a dev, a quality, and
we usually got a 4-tier
Yeah, it's a 3-tier plus sandboxes.
Plus that's a sandbox.
Okay, so 3-tier plus your sandbox.
Yeah, we got a couple of environments. We got a couple of sandboxes for the multiple projects we're running at the same time. But I usually got a 3-tier, like Sham said.
Okay. And
Excellent.
what about releases? Do you guys, how often do you guys do custom releases on your system?
We don't really have a release control mechanism. We develop enhancements as we go, and we do projects as much as we can. So that's one of the reasons
Okay.
why we have to make sure that we got better handle of this. So upgrades are opportunistic as well, and sometimes enforced by the functionality we want to implement.
Okay. And what release are you guys on today?
EHP, both of them are 6.0. One is EHP 6 and the other one is EHP 8.
So you have 2 production landscapes?
Yeah, we got 2 divisions, and each of these divisions got their own landscape.
Okay, perfect. All right.
Just looking at this slide, is there anything in particular that you guys would like us to focus on for this session? Or does everything kind of?
All of it.
Okay.
No, it's.
Maybe not the S4 migration. I don't know.
But not right now. Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
yet.
I mean, I think there are a lot of things listed here that actually are interesting for all of us in this call. I mean, I can see SOX and SOT audits. I look at the custom code insights. We
Data quality.
validation and harmonization. So I think we're going to be looking into it anytime soon.
Yeah.
But that's also, I mean, we are a company that we're growing organically. So that can be also a very powerful tool for us at one point in time. When you talk about system synchronization, can you elaborate a little bit more about it? Can you, so this is just, can you keep systems in the tiers replicated, or how does that work?
Not necessarily replicated, but so Live Compare is really good at doing real-time mass volume comparisons of code, configuration, and data, like master data.
Okay.
So you can schedule Live Compare to run, say, weekly or nightly or quarterly, however frequent that you want to run it. And it will go out and it will mass compare your code between different systems and pinpoint where you're out of sync. And what you can do is you can go in and you can kind of just spot fix here and there to keep yourselves in sync. And so what that does is that eliminates the need of having to do as many system refreshes as that you might be doing this.
Oh, that's really interesting. Can you actually do like specific scope comparisons, like a limited scope comparisons, like an area where you want to go and say, okay, I'm having trouble in our production environment with an issue, and then you want to go back into your quality environment and check that is working probably better, and then you can do a comparison with that and figure out what the differences are.
Yeah, that goes to this troubleshooting and debugging. So instead of doing like a mass comparison of a whole bunch of stuff, we can do some very smart, very targeted comparisons to help troubleshoot and find the root cause of issues within minutes. Like, for example, if you had a T code that was working, say, in QA, and it wasn't working or misbehaving in production and you weren't sure why, you could compare that T code. And then what Live Compare will do is it will go find all of its dependencies and then compare it. And then any of the dependencies that have issues, we'll be able to drill down into it to show you if it was a code issue that was causing the problem, or if it was a configuration or data issue or what have you. So within minutes, we can help you kind of pinpoint the root cause of those kinds of issues.
That's really cool. I mean, I think there are a lot of things. I mean, we can talk for hours on each of these boxes.
Yeah.
Initially, we wanted to understand a little bit about the test coverage, because
so actually, Jose, if you remember, our original discussion was let's deep dive into Live Compare and also see how we can automate testing using Tosca. And yes, I think what we are seeing now is there is way much more than those two that we initially wanted. But I'll let you guys decide what what you can cover not, or we can have a second demo for other things, right? But I know if you guys are prepared for everything else and can do it in the time that we have, great. If not, I think we could do a slice it now for what you have and then have another demo for.
So I think that, yeah, I think Shatender is right. I think we wanted to go over the test coverage initially. One of the main elements we jump into this is we spend so much time in operates. It's just too consuming for our teams to actually go and do regression testing. And one of the things that we talk about many times is that how do we figure out quickly what's the impact of enhancement packages? How can we actually be smart about the testing we're doing, et cetera, and then automating it? So that's kind of how we started all this. Obviously, all these other things you got here are interesting for us, right?
Okay. So let me do this then. I'll kind of do sort of abbreviated versions of drilling down into a few of these different things. And then I'll give some time for Allison to kind of, walk you into Live Compare, and you can take a look at it live as well. Does that sound like a good plan?
Yeah. Now, just one more question, Michael. So with Live Compare, can you run this tool outside SAP products or not?
No, it's SAP centric.
It's very SAP. Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Live Compare.
What about Java systems? Can you run them on Java systems as well?
No, just ABAP based stack.
Okay.
So I think Live Compare is SAP centric, but Tosca could be anything, right?
Good point. Yes, that's correct. Yeah. So Tosca is, there is no, I think it supports 170 different technologies. You can automate on all SAP and above.
Yeah, that's correct.
The reason I'm asking you this, Michael, is because we have in the call also another gentleman called Mike Dons. He's actually the manager of our manufacturing systems, and a lot of these systems are non-SAP, and some of them are SAP, but they are Java systems. So, but we want to make sure that we include that in his scope, so he understands what are we talking about here, not only SAP.
Yeah, yeah. So Live Compare is SAP specific, but Tosca is not.
Got it.
Yep.
Right.
Okay. So I know that last slide was a little bit daunting, a lot of different things. So I put this slide in here just to simplify it for customers seeing Live Compare for the first time. The easiest way to simplify it is just break down Live Compare into these 3 core functions that it can do. And then with each one of these core functions, these are all the different use cases in which you can utilize those core functions. So the impact analysis you can use for all these kinds of use cases. The SAP comparison analytics that we provide can use for all these different use cases. And then you can just use Live Compare to query and provide different kinds of audits or insights in and around your environment, doing code quality analytics or transaction utilization or what have you. So before I start to dive into some of the results, I just wanted to quickly explain how Live Compare works, how it would get set up in your environment. And the beauty of this tool is it's literally a rapid time to value solution. We don't even consider it really an implementation. It's more of just an installation, but you can set up, fully deploy, get Live Compare fully operational in your own custom SAP environment in a day is typically what we'll say. And the way that it works, so Live Compare is considered an SAP ABAP add-on. We're an SAP certified ABAP add-on. We live inside of your SAP environment. That's how we're able to read and analyze any code or config or tables or just data or anything in your environment, security, and provide insights around anything. But the way that we're architected is you install Live Compare on a Windows server that sits outside of SAP. Okay, so it's an on-premise. It sits in your environment, but it sits outside of SAP on a VM. And the way that works is it communicates or queries your SAP systems through a RFC call, right? There is a Live Compare transport that we ask you to apply to your SAP systems that gets our add-on in the environment, but really it's 1 hour to install Live Compare onto the server, and then you apply the Live Compare transports to your SAP systems, And then you're literally off and running with the technology. All right. There's nothing that you guys need to do manually to make this work or make it operational in your environment. There's no prep work needed. It's not reliant on anything within Solution Manager or anything like that. So once you get it installed and connected to your SAP systems, you can start running any of the analysis that you want immediately. We will also integrate with any test repository. Obviously, our sister product, Tosca. We like Tosca, but if you have other test repositories as well, like ALM or Certify or something else out there, we can also integrate with those test repositories to give you test coverage. Any questions on that?
No.
Okay.
So very quickly, outside of ECC, what coverage do you have? Like APO or other things, right?
Yep, definitely APO, EWM, anything on the ABAP stack, you can install Live Compare on. So
anything that's ABAP stack, okay.
Yep, BW, CRM, APO, SCM, all of those in the ABAP stack. Okay. All right. So let me, I'm going to start with the impact analysis here. I'll show you how you can use this impact analysis for like an upgrade. So essentially we had a customer that was doing a pretty big upgrade. In this case, they were doing an S4 upgrade going from 1709 to 2020. And they wanted to know, okay, if we do this upgrade, what's the impact going to be to our production system? And what do we need to test? All right. We don't want to go out and test everything, right? Because not everything that's, in this up is going to impact, is going to be impacted. So we just want to focus our testing efforts. But for this customer, this is everything that they use in production today. All right. They use 4,200 standard C codes, programs, Fiori apps, executables in production, and they use 830 standard. All right. So they use 5,000 executables in production today. After analyzing the upgrade, which was pretty significant, it said, Live Compare says, you don't need to go out and test everything. What you really need to go out and test are these 919 codes and programs and executables. These are your most at risk codes, programs that you use in production that are going to be affected by the upgrade, right? So just focus your testing in this particular area, right? On these 919 right here. And this particular customer, they used ALM. So we scoured ALM. This is where integration with the test repository comes in. We looked at ALM and we found that out of the 919 C codes that were impacted by the upgrade, 307 of those we found tests for in ALM. And then for remainder 612, we couldn't find any tests for that. So I'm going to first drill into the impact analysis here, show you that. Then I can show you a little bit on the coverage side. And this is what the impact analysis drill down looks like. Essentially over here, what we're calling out, this is the test scope. These are the T codes and the programs that are going to be affected by the upgrade. And this is what you need to test. These are the changing objects that are coming in on the upgrade, right? So SAP is changing all these structures, functions, tables, includes, and because of these changes, we're able to link it up to the programs or the T codes that you're using in production today that are going to be affected, right? So, for example, if I picked on like this T code, this custom T code right here, you can see that custom T code is very highly used in production. And the reason why that it's most at risk is because SAP is changing this function right here. That's changing, coming in on this upgrade, this support pack right here. All right. So this is a fact-based scientific analysis that's being done. It's a real time in your environment. But essentially, we're telling you here's what you need to test over here on the left. By the way, you have this customer. They had 37 tests in ALM to cover this T code. So pretty good coverage. And there's 263 users that use this T code. And I could drill into those and see who those users are and so forth. Does that make sense so far?
So what does the ALM Quality Center is? Can you just elaborate a little bit?
Yep, I'll drill into that here.
Okay.
So, like, what are these 37 tests? You can start to drill into it. So these T codes right here, these were most at risk, right? From the impact analysis. When we searched through ALM, we found tests for these transactions right here. And what we do is we pull out those tests. We actually found 8,256 tests in ALM to cover these 307 T codes, right? And then you can see here's the test ID, the test name, what type of test is it, or the test path to where we found that test. So really, we pull out all of those tests, and then we can actually automatically execute those tests for you. We do that same exact thing in Tosca. We do it a little bit better in Tosca because we can get more granular with the type of tests that you would need to run.
So the heavy lifting is also on the ALM side, right? So you need to have all these test scenarios correctly set up and everything so you can actually automate that. So that's the real value after you doing the comparison, right?
The real value, well, there's two real values. One is the test scope, right? So again, if I took you back to that first slide, right? This is everything that this customer uses. When you do a change, you don't really know what's going to be affected, right? So what you try to do is try to test as much as you can, or try to test everything just to be safe. Now you have a product that will tell you exactly what you need to test. Don't go out and try to test everything. Don't do a whole bunch of unnecessary testing. Only test what's necessary. And we can actually pinpoint right here the 919 that you need to test. So this is the test scope. So we've just cut down your test scope by 82%. The next value point that we bring is we go and say, okay, what tests do we have in ALM that we can run to cover these transactions? And there isn't a special way that you have to have those tests in ALM or in Tosca. You just need to have this T code or the program called out in the test somewhere. And that's best practice typically, right? Because the T code is the testable layer in SAP. And typically when you're doing a test, you're going to call out the T code name that you're going to be running, or the set of T codes that you're going to be running in that test.
That's pretty good.
Does that make sense? And then what we do for the gaps, remember there was 612 T codes that we couldn't find any tests for in ALM. So those are considered your test gaps, right? And so what do you do with those gaps? Well, you can sort that gap by usage, sending. So here's the heavy hitting one. So this code here, when we searched ALM, we couldn't find any tests for it. And you can see this is the most highly used code that didn't have any tests. So maybe we start building out some tests in this area, and then we kind of work our way down the ladder here.
And you go with the Pareto rule there, yeah.
Yeah, and also we can pull in the user, the top user. So if like this one right here, this transaction, it was a gap used 9 million times, I think, is that what it is, or 90,000, 9 million. You can see this user right here is the top user of this transaction. So you could go to this top user and say, okay, what kind of test can we create for this transaction or what have you? So we can point you to the right user that will help you create those tests. Make sense?
Yeah.
Awesome. But really, the change impact analysis, this can be used for any kind of change. This is really, really important. It's not just for upgrades. This can also be used for your major and minor change releases, your emergency fixes that you do, any legal or regulatory. You embed this into your change process. And so anytime you introduce transports into your environment, it runs through Live Compare. Live Compare will pinpoint what you need to test and allow you to cut down on your testing significantly. And by doing that, It's going to remove that testing bottleneck that you might be experiencing today. You'll be able to roll out production support changes a lot faster, be more responsive to the business needs for new functionality enhancements. You can do SAP upgrades more frequently in less time with lower costs. And if you're doing any digital transformation initiatives, you can go to market faster with those kinds of projects.
So how fast is how fast it runs the analysis? So if you, let's say you got a transport you're changing and you want to do the test, how long it takes to actually do that?
It's not long. You know, if you're doing like a small change, like on your weekly transports,
Right.
maybe it'll take an hour. If you're doing a big upgrade, right, with, you know, analyzing 1 million changed objects, maybe 2 hours, 3 hours, somewhere around there.
And what about the system performance? Does it hit the system performance by doing this?
Not at all. So that's why we architected Live Compare the way that we did, is that all of the analysis, all of the computing is being done on the Live Compare server, right, outside of SAP. So we're just reading information out of SAP, but doing all the analysis on the Live Compare server.
That's pretty good. Okay.
Let me get out of this. Sorry, I have to keep. So let me take you back to this. The other thing that I wanted to show you was some of the comparison analytics, because these comparison analytics, as you saw, there's a lot of different use cases in which you can use these. So let me take you into the custom code comparison. This is actually where we can mass compare custom code between two systems, right? So if it's your objective to make sure that your custom code stays in sync between systems, you can schedule this to run however frequent that you want, and then spot fix things as needed, and not have to worry about doing those system refreshes because your custom code is out of sync. And so what we did here was we said, go out and just compare everything between D49 and D41, all right? You can pick whatever systems that you want, but these were the ones that we picked for this customer. And we just said Z star, leave it wide open, compare everything that's custom. So it went out and it found 74,000 custom objects, and then mass compared them between D49 and D41. About 40,000 of those custom objects were the same. There were 650 custom objects that were in both systems, but there were some code differences. So there were 650 of those discrepancies. There was 13,000 custom objects that were only in D49 and 20,000 that were only in D41, right? And you can start to drill down and see all the data. So here are all the different custom object types that we looked at. Smart forms, SAP scripts, functions, includes, BOPs, you name it, we compared it all. And I just picked on this one row here. So the classes, 1,000 of those classes were the same, but there was 33 classes that were different. And I can see here are the 33 classes as I start to drill down into it. I could, click on any one of these classes and it will drill me right down into the code. And I can see how it's different at the code level. So this I would be like D49, this I would be D41. And if I had thought, well, why is this out of sync, right? I thought this should be in sync. We're going to give you some really good, valuable information over here to help you understand why it's out of sync. So you can see, this class, was on one transport recently. This was the most recent transport that it was on. This was the person that put that transport in on this date and at this time. So this is the reason why this class is probably out of sync between the two systems. Does that make sense?
Yeah, just a quick question. So Debbie, do you remember that when we were talking about actually having those info sets that they were out of sync between the systems? Can you use that for things that are like info sets, like structure?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. All of that. Yep.
That looks great.
Yeah, so that you can keep your non-production environments pretty much very close to your production environment for having accurate testing, right?
That's the idea, exactly. And even more so, really with configuration, right? I mean, keeping your QA and production in sync from a configuration perspective is extremely important, because when you do all of your testing in QA, you want it to behave the same way when it goes to prod, right? So here we said, let's compare the configuration between D49 100, so this client versus D49 140. But you can do it. You can do it. This is just to show that you can do it between clients, but you can do it between QA and prod or whatever you want to do. And in Live Compare, you have the option to select what area of the IMG that you want to compare. So in this case, yeah, we just said, let's compare the financial accounting node. And what Live Compare does, it's smart enough to go find all of the config tables related to that financial accounting node. So there was 3,623 config tables that we compared, and 3,500 of those are the same. There's 63 config tables that are different, meaning they're in both systems, but there's some content differences. And then there's 16 that are unique to D49, and you're okay on D49 140. So you get the nice kind of dashboard summary here. You get a list of all the config tables that were compared, and then you can click on any one of the tables, and it will drill you right down into the table. It's just a pop-up. So you can see the this T0030 table. You can get a summary of all the row counts that were compared, and you can see the number range for this field is different. In D49, it was configured as 19, but in D49 100, there was no numerical value there, right? So whenever you see an X, that's a split line. So D49 100 is on the top, D49 140 is on the bottom, and everything in green here, this is the table key. And you can see, on the top, there's no configuration, and then in D49 140, it's 19. Does that make sense?
Yeah, very good.
Again, you don't have to run these manually. You just schedule them to run however frequent that you want. And then these reports will be sent to you automatically in an email or a link to the report. We can do master data for sure. I won't drill into too much of this one, but I did want to show you the
Also, you can master data as well, master data comparisons.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yep. So very similar to what we do for config. You can select the master data area that you want to compare. So in this case, we said, let's compare the material master between these two clients. And you can see Live Compare is smart enough to go find all of the material master tables related to that area. So it's looked at MARA, MACT, MARC, MARD. It found all those tables and then compared it. You get a nice summary of everything. And then you can drill into any of the tables that have difference. So the MARA table, I could drill right into it and see the actual content difference. So we've got tons of customers that use this for data quality, data governance. So maybe they're not comparing master data between, different systems. They're typically comparing maybe master data between ECC and MDG, or ECC to BW, right? To make sure that their master data stays in sync across their different SAP modules, which is really important.
So you really can narrow down to the detail of, in this example, the material number, right? In your comparison MARA, and then you're looking at the fields and you're actually seeing the difference between one and the other one.
Right.
Like,
all the way down to the minute detail that you need to look at.
that's nice. If I would have this in the past, man, it would have saved some hair for me.
Yeah. Well, okay. We could still save some. So, all right. So the last one that I'll show you is the T-code comparison, because this kind of goes to that troubleshooting root cause analysis. So basically here, when we do a T-code compare, like let's say, for example, this T-code ZX02, it was working fine in QA, but in prod, it doesn't work, right? You just put in the T-code that you want to compare, you hit the two systems and you hit run. And what Live Compare does is it goes and it finds all of the dependencies that T-code relies on to work. It finds all the screens, all the functions, all the structures, the table, everything that makes that code work, and then compared it. So out of the 78 dependency objects, 55 of those were the same, 23 were different. Typically, you won't see as much of a difference. You might see one or two things that are different, and then I can see what's different. So there was 3 functions that were different. I can see those here, and I can drill down into the code to see how it's different at the code level. And there were some table differences, right? It was 17 tables that were different. I can click again on that Mara table, show me right down into the contents to see how it's different. So this takes maybe 5 minutes to run, 10 minutes max. But typically when you have an issue like that, you have to call in your data stewards, you have to call in your developers, you get maybe a configurator, and start researching, why is this T code not working, right? And you spend 80% of your time trying to debug and find the root cause of the issue. Once you find the issue, the fix is easy, right? So what we do is we eliminate that 80% of the time that it takes to find the root cause of the issue. We can find it and allow you just to make the necessary fix. And so I want to leave some time for Allison. Is there anything else that you want me to kind of cover before I hand it over to her?
No, I think we can probably drill down later more into other subjects in your initial slide, but I think this is pretty good. You guys got any questions? I mean, Sham, Debbie, Pam?
No, sounds interesting.
Okay, yeah. So really all the analytics and the insights that you see in the top row up here, this is gonna really help you transform your change process. It's gonna allow you to move a lot quicker, it's gonna speed up velocity and do it with much better quality. We didn't talk about the test audit, but this is like a quality gate. So right before you're getting ready to release into prod, it can check to see if all the things that were identified as affected, if it's actually been tested. So we have that test audit analysis. And the code quality, this is the other quality gate that's the very beginning of your change process. So we can analyze all of the code that's coming in, make sure that you don't have any inefficiencies or vulnerabilities in your code. So we help you shift left on quality here. Your managers and improvers that bring that code in can make data-driven decisions, whether that you're meeting up to all the coding standards and that it's good to go. And so now you're building quality in versus trying to test it out further down in the pipeline. But we can talk about all that stuff later on. I just want to give Allison some time to kind of do a walkthrough of the product for you.
Okay.
All right, thanks, Mike. Well, let's jump into Live Compare and just take a look at some of the change impact analysis, the smart impact piece. And you guys feel free to ask any questions as we go through this. Okay, so Live Compare has both a studio side where you can work with workflows, and then we also have the apps side, which is a very easy user interface for customers to use. So this is the front page of the apps that we have available. And you can start to see some of the different flavors of the impact analysis here on this front screen. So there's all kinds of continuous impact analysis for configuration and development and security. So as you start releasing those tasks, we are able to analyze those in an automated fashion and give you the impacted objects back right away. We also cover all of the objects that are released as well. So when you think about smart impact and you're thinking about those projects that you're working on, or maybe a bundle of changes that you're making, those would all go into that release impact analysis. And let's take a look at what the inputs are when you start talking about that. So if we go out to the actual apps themselves, you can see there's apps in development, testing, security, operations, and then an uncategorized section here where you can develop some of your custom apps. So on the development side, you got to see some of this today in Mike Catnella's slides. So some of the code watch and code guard, some of the code analysis that we can do. Being able to go out and compare objects between two systems is something that will be super helpful as you guys go through making changes to your SAP landscapes, looking at impacted custom code when you're making changes. On the testing piece, there's all kinds of things that you can use around testing. The Smart Impact is what we're going to focus on today. But we also have apps out there that look at creating, healing your tests. So when you make changes to your system and you think about the automation that you have out there, you always want to make sure that your automation is up to date. And Mark will probably talk with you guys about this on another session when he gets to talk more about Tosca and the automated testing piece. But you want to make sure that those tests stay up to date. Well, Live Compare, just by the nature of the analysis that Live Compare can do, can take a look at any screen changes that you make in SAP and say, hey, you're using these same screens in your tests today, in those automated tests. Go out and update these screens so that your automation runs perfectly each time you run it. You'll never have any tests that fail because of changes that you've made on the SAP side. We'll alert you to those changes up front so that you can make those tweaks or changes before you run them. There's some different things in the security area, finding similar roles, looking at surveying the roles that you have and being able to do comparison between roles and looking at the transactions that they're using, etc. And then all kinds of operations apps that are out there. So you guys probably talked about a few of these today that compare objects. The Compare ING is another key app that people use, keeping your configuration in sync between QA and production, or dev and QA, or just being able to see where those differences are. But let's take a look in the testing section here at the Smart Impact piece. And so what we're looking at here is being able to go out and analyze those changes as you make them to your SAP system. So any of those enhancements that you would be looking at, and just getting a handle on what needs to be tested for each one of those groups of changes. So these are the ones that you could use for your emergency fix, any kind of monthly releases or weekly, any kind of support pack upgrade that you're doing from SAP, or even when you guys do get to S4, you'll be doing upgrades on your S4 box as well. We can help you with those. But if we take a look at one of these, the setup is super simple. So it's looking at a transport or an object. So that's the input or the starting point. So you're making a change to your SAP system. And you're going to drop in those transports. It could be a few transports like this, or you can paste from Excel. You could paste in 1,000 transports. So if you're looking at support packs from SAP, you may have 800 or 900 or 1,000 transports, or even a little bit more as you go through and do an upgrade. But you can easily paste those in from Excel to be able to run the analysis. And then same thing for the objects. Any type of object, ABAP object, that you would be analyzing, you could drop in here as well. I didn't really hear you guys say, are you using Charm today or any kind of transport management tool?
Say that again.
No, we don't use Charm.
No, we don't.
Okay. Do you use any transport management tool?
No.
No.
Okay, not today. Okay. So leave this piece out right here. Then we'll give it an analysis system. So that would be your development box where you start to make the changes on those transports. We'll give it the performance history system will be your production instance. And that production instance is used to grab all of your executables off of your SAP system. So what Live Compare does is each month it goes out and downloads that performance history data so that eventually on the Live Compare server, you have 13 months or 25 months worth of usage statistics that we can use in all of those different apps that we were talking about earlier. And the Smart Impact app is one of them that use the usage statistics. And the reason we use that is when you think about if you're doing a large upgrade from SAP and you have a huge number of support packs that are coming through, you want to make sure that we're tying the change event back to what you use on your system. You don't want to go out and try and test all of the changes that are coming through. You want to be very specific about testing what you guys use. So we use that performance history data in several different places and the different apps or workflows. Then down here, we'll give it a comparison system so that you can do that side-by-side kind of drop-in that you saw in Mike's slides, where you can see the differences between the objects that you're looking at. So what's on the transport today and what you're using in production or QA. And then we'll give it a test repository. So you can put in your Tosca test repository or whatever you're using for manual tests today. And we can go out and do things like create the test execution. We can even execute the tests on the Tosca side, and then we can create your test requirements as well. And just keep in mind, this is kind of the manual way of doing it. As you get those transports together, you can also do it in an automated fashion. So once we run that, and it can run anywhere from 30 minutes to maybe an hour and a half or 2 hours, it really does depend on the number of objects that it's looking at in the analysis. It can be fairly quick if you're just doing 1 or 2 custom development transports. It might only be 30 or 40 minutes to get that information back. Runs in the background. It's not like you have to sit here and have it up on your screen. It runs in the background. You can come back and check it. So if we look at the output here on the right-hand side, the first thing that comes up, or the first graphic that comes up, is really a tree map. And it's meant to kind of focus your eyes in on that bright blue color. And then you have your other reports down here at the bottom. So the dashboard, and then also the Excel report that's delivered with it. So let's jump out to the Excel here. And you start to see some of the graphics that you were seeing in Mike's slide. So this right here, the used, impacted, and most at risk, is really the first thing. And we start off with all of that, the used executables on your production system. So the first thing we want to do is know what you're using on your system as we go through and analyze the change that you're making. So both standard and custom. And then for that specific group of transports that we were looking at, I think in my case, we had 6 that we were looking at. How many of those objects are going to be impacted? How many of these objects in this set right here are going to be impacted? And there's a couple ways to get to this. You can talk to your developers. You can try to think about what it was that you were changing and pull in those transactions or programs or executables. You could maybe use another application that can get to impacted objects. But what Live Compare does a great job of is getting to the most at risk. So getting down to this set of executables that cover all of the changes that you're making on the transports that you're putting through. So in this case, there was 130 standard and 34 custom, so 164 objects here in this most at risk. So would you rather be testing this or even testing this, or would you rather come over here and test the ones that you know are the most important, that are gonna make sure that you cover each one of the objects that you're changing in your transports? So this is really key right here to Live Compare. It really does reduce the amount of testing that you have to do, but still ensures that you're testing the right set of executables. So then we'll take that and we'll go out and look at your test repository over here in the most at risk test hits and gaps. In this case, we went out and scanned and found 29 test hits. We found 135 gaps. So where we could not find a test to accommodate whatever the impacted object was. And those gaps are really important. And the reason that they're important is you want to make sure, as you guys go down the path of building automation, that you're building the right automation. So you want to be building automation for things that are being impacted on your system. So Live Compare will give you that. Each time you run it, it'll give you, here's your hits, here's the things that you need, here are your hits, and then here are your gaps. Here are the things that you need to create. Then we'll give you your test coverage broken out into objects. So how many tests did you have that were covering the T codes that were most at risk, or the roles, or the IDOCs, or the programs, so that you can see that. And then we'll also give you the most at risk by application area, so that you know where the majority of the change is happening. So in this case right here, in those transports that we were analyzing here, it looks like custom objects, security, and materials management were kind of the 3 top ones for number of impacts. And then as we go along the bottom, we'll get into more of the details here. So there's a help tab that kind of level sets everything that we're talking about here. And then there's a home sheet. And this home sheet has a ton of great information on it. So it starts with that application area. And then it gets into these are the objects that are recommended to test. I've sorted it by most at risk, but the report gives you all three of those pillars. So you still have the impacted, the ones in the middle, and then you also have all of the used executables as well. So you have all of those. We've just sorted it so that we see the most at risk here at the top. Then we'll give you the impactful objects. These are the objects that are causing us to call out these objects right here in column C as most at risk. So these are the ones that are changing and impacting those objects. And we'll take a look at that in just a sec. We'll give you the test hits, the usage for those objects, so you know how important they are. You may want to sort on usage. That's sometimes a good driver of what things you should be going out and testing. And then we'll give you the users and then the top user. And I think Mike talked a little bit about the top user and why it's so important. But if you have a gap in your testing, the top user is somebody that can typically help you. And when Mark takes you through the automation piece, one of the things that you can do on the Tosca side is go out and just record running a transaction code. So just a normal user, SAP user, could go out and create a recording of the transaction that they are the top user of, so that you have a test for that particular transaction code. And it's very easy. You don't have to have a lot of knowledge of Tosca or testing to be able to go out and do that kind of a recording. So top user and their usage. If we go over here to the impactful objects and just double click here on this 11, it takes us out to the details for VA01 right here. This is one of our most at risk transactions. And it gives you the change ID over here. So the custom development transport or support pack ID tells you about the type and the name of that object on the transport that's impacting VA01. And then notice the hyperlink here. You're able to go out and execute this hyperlink to see the side-by-side comparison of those objects. So this is a great drill down into live compare. You saw this on some of the slides. Everything up here is the same where you see those green check marks, but this last one down here is different. And you can see that the code is different. It's only found in System 2. It's brand new code in this particular release. So you can get a feel for what the changes are here between development and what you're seeing and what you're actually using today in production. We'll tell you about the depth, where we find that changing object. So this one was found at a depth of 2. So VA01 calls a program and then maybe calls this enhancement object. But the depth is important because you want to make sure that what you're testing is closely related to that changing object. And that's the whole idea behind live compare, going out and getting to that most at risk, is going through all of that data that you have in your SAP system and using some of those using the cache that we set up in the background to be able to go through and say, you're impacting this lower level object right here. Tell me what I need to test from an executable standpoint and how far away is it from that executable. So that's the depth. And then description, we'll give you the screen over here if we can tie it back to a screen that's changing. And then the users, the test hits right here will pull out any of the tests that cover this particular token or test asset that you have. So whether it be an automated test or a manual test, we'll pull it out so that you know exactly what you need to go out and test. And then one of the special pieces within Tosca is around test data. So if you're using Tosca for your automation and you're making configuration changes, if I pop open one of these tables that we were comparing, you can see some of the config changes right here. So for this particular field, the sales document type, there's a change out there. When you think about what test you would want to run to test that, it would be great if you could run a test that uses that field, right? So just by the nature of live compare, it can go out, scan those automated tests in Tosca and say, I can see that they use this field in this particular test, and pull out that test and say, this test is special. you have all of these tests that are for VA01, but this test has data in it. So you want to make sure that you run those tests when you're looking at config changes. So that's a great piece of integration with Tosca. So all of that came from the impactful objects. If we scoot over just a little bit to the right, you can see some of the other things, development class, whether or not it's custom. The business critical piece right here is customer centric. So you can drive the most at risk group of transactions by, if you have a transaction that's so critical to your business that you would want to test it every time it's changed, you can add that to the business critical list, and we always put that in the MAR, in the most at risk list, so that you would always test that. So we're talking maybe 10 or 15 transactions that you have that might be critical to your business here. So it's not a heavy lift or anything. So going across the bottom here, the impacted screens and users and roles all get pulled into the impactful objects. The test hits and gaps, just giving you your test coverage. So where do you have gaps and where you have hits? It's a great summary. And then the test hit details and test data. We give you all of those test hit details. If I take my filter off here, you can see all of the tests that we found from this particular run. You may never get off this home tab right here. There's a lot of great information right here. So you know exactly what to go out and test and who could help you create a test if you needed one. So if you think about it at this point, we've run our app and we have the most at risk. To kind of finish out what the app does, we take that most at risk and we scan your test repository. So if I flip over now to the Tosca side of the house, when we talked about scanning your test repository, we're talking about going out and scanning the tests that you have built in the automation side or the manual, whatever manual application you'd be using. But we go out and scan these tests for all of those most at risk executables. We populate the requirements tab right here with any of the gaps that you had. So now you have record of those gaps and you can start thinking about building automation for these gaps that you have. And then we also build the execution list. So now you have a list of tests that need to be run, and you can go out and kick off the run in Tosca, or you can toggle the switch on the live compare side and have it run that execution list automatically when you run the app. So if you think about it, what we've done is we've taken your change from development and we walked all the way through the cycle. And Mike, I don't know if you want to take them back to that slide that kind of shows going from one end of the spectrum all the way out to production with very little defects. But in essence, you've really covered that whole spectrum of you've got to change, you need to identify what to test, you need to test it and make sure that you've tested it and get into production with little or no defects.
Yeah, Alison, I think it's important for us to hear talk about non-SAP piece of testing. And I know myself, I know the answer, but a lot of people in the group here don't, right? How you can execute one step in SAP and then go and do something else and come back or whatever, right? So if you could briefly talk about that for the group here.
Yeah, so Mark's gonna take that one. I don't know if you want to just highlight a little bit about that right now, Mark, or.
Sure, yeah. So, so Live Compare is about, telling you what you need to test in SAP. But Tosca itself is a no code, no programming solution. In fact, we support 170 plus different technologies. The thing that we're really good at is SAP, of course, but creating those end-to-end test cases. And so, whether or not, you have a web app or an order application type of application, a desktop app, C#, .NET, whatever the case may be, you can go from one technology or one app and then another and another and another. And all you do is, we use this model-based testing approach to create our test cases. And maybe what I'll do is, Mike, Allison, if you guys are done, maybe I'll just kind of jump into kind of, how our solution works here.
Sure.
Yeah, go for
Any
it, Mark.
questions? Yeah, any questions before we switch over to Mark on the impact analysis or smart impact app?
No, I think
No.
I don't. I think that what your guys are going to bring up right now, I think is key for us as well. I mean, because we want to know our testing scope many times is beyond, obviously it's across the landscape, and integration is, between systems is key element, right? And in our landscape.
Perfect. Perfect.
Yeah.
And
Can I jump in and just kind of give you just a quick overview? This is Mike
Of course.
Dunn. So I manage the shop floor applications, which are mainly non-SAP.
okay.
We do have SAP MII in our metal division that
Okay.
integrates with SAP.
Okay.
It pushes IDOCs down, and we have function module calls going back up. And we have various other integration from apps that, as we do upgrades and that, those are things we have to, include with the test to make sure that, all the function modules are working as they were with the upgrade and all that type of stuff. So
Right.
that's kind of what I'm interested in seeing and how this tool would be useful for that.
Yeah, no, that's perfect, Mike. And that's kind of where I was going to go with ECT or Tosca as we know it. Any other questions just kind of before I start? And I know I don't have a lot of time, but I can maybe just do kind of an intro to Tosca for you. And then maybe we could schedule some more time for a proper, demo of the tool. But I do have, kind of the fundamentals, the basics of what Tosca is.
Okay. No, I think we should go up now.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. So just very quickly, I wanted to talk about maybe the overall platform, and so my piece is really going to be about the intelligent test automation, which is Tricentis Tosca. We did an acquisition earlier this year in and around being able to test ServiceNow. So we've got some app native testing, but that's not to say that Tosca is not able to test ServiceNow. In fact, it is, and it does a great job. It's just for people who are ServiceNow automation experts and they enjoy the coding piece of that. They can continue to do that. We just talked about the smart impact analysis and really how it works with Tosca. We do have a test management tool. This is our ALM tool. And really, this is where you can house your requirements, your test plans, your test cases, your execution. We've got tight integration with, software development tools like Microsoft's ADO or Jenkins or Jira, that type of thing. So you can keep those things in sync with your developers. A piece, kind of a plug-in, if you will, to Tosca is the ability to do data integrity testing. So think of ETL type of testing. If you're moving data from one database to another, from on-prem to the cloud, we can run the test to make sure that all of the data before it's moved is set up correctly, and then when it does move, that the data is there correctly, and that you can trust that data. Earlier this year, we did another acquisition in and around performance testing. And this was interesting because the company is called Neotis, and they've had really tight integration with Tosca for about 7 years. And I wasn't really familiar with it, but when I really understand the acquisition, because it's very similar to Tosca. It's a low-code testing solution, and there is an integration with Tosca where if you do have a functional test case, whether SAP or not, or it could be web or it could be something else, but you can convert a Tosca test case into a Neoload load test. Very interesting, very powerful. Okay.
You said Neoris is the company?
The company was called Neotis, Neotys, I think.
Okay.
And their product is called Neoload, and they've had integration with Tosca for about 7 years. Yeah. Yeah, it's super powerful. And I mean, and it kind of follows our approach around, the model-based testing approach that I want to show you. Yeah. So here's just some stuff. I'll just click through that. But, you know, Tosca is the automated testing tool. And, you know, Mike and Allison just talked about the change impact analysis for SAP. And that tool really kind of tells you exactly what you need to go out and test. What are all of the test cases you need to create to cover off those test gaps so that, you know, you can start releasing into production with zero defects. So I'm just really going to focus on the ECT piece. Here's the Neo load, you know, so do your app scale as well. And, you know, the ability to take a Tosca test case and convert it is extremely powerful. So what is ECT or Tosca? So Tosca is our model-based test automation. And really, you know, it covers about 170 plus different technologies. It's ideal for manual testers, BAs, automation testers who, you know, want to be able to create test cases, you know, very seamlessly and being able to do the end-to-end testing. You know, built into Tosca is the ability to do risk-based testing. And, you know, I've been in QA for a little over 30 years now. And, you know, I've worked with a lot of organizations and I've done a lot of testing. And a lot of organizations really want to be able to do risk-based testing and they don't know where to start or how to get to it, or they make it very complex. We've taken a very agile approach to risk-based testing. Okay, now when we do get to a demo, I will show you how we do that and how we can focus your testing on those highest risk, highest priority requirements, and then ensure that, you know, in your 2-week releases or your 2-week sprints that you are focused on that testing. So, you know, with the broad breadth of technologies that we support, you know, I would say we get, you know, automation rates of 90% or better, depending on what you're trying to do. Again, everything from mainframe to mobile, packaged applications, .NET, C#, mobile, mainframe even. And I do have a list later on in the slide deck that I want to share with you. And I would say, and I'll ask you guys the same question, you know, is test data an issue for you guys? And, you know, I would say over the last 30 years, it's test data has always been a big part of testing. You know, where do you get it? How do you create it? We have the ability to create synthetic data within Tosca. And we have standard modules that come out of the box that allow you to just drag and drop those modules and work with test data. And in fact, you know, when you install the Tosca server, there is a test data management repository there where you could import production data from a database, an Excel file, a flat file, CSV, text, you name it. We can, you know, import it and we can use it. And it's working with static and dynamic data. So if you want to use a row of data, you know, pull it in, input it into your application, and then maybe mark it off or capture a user, an order ID or a delivery date or something like that. You can update the file very, very easily. Whoa. My keyboard's going crazy here. OSV is another part of our solution that we have. And really, this is about service virtualization for testing. And so we can simulate the responses back to your application. And the tool kind of works as like a proxy or a middleman where, you know, it learns the requests that are going across the wire and the responses that are coming back. And it's great for, you know, API testing, mainframe testing. There's about 40 or so environments that we can emulate. And this is great, you know, if you know, your servers or your APIs are not built, or your server is just kind of, you know, being shut down, rebooted, updated, that type of thing. It really allows you to start shifting left in your testing. So Tosca or ECT is really about, you know, risk-based testing and end-to-end testing, I guess, is our sweet spot and what we are very proud of that we can do, and the amount of technologies that we support. Let me just kind of give you an idea of how Tosca works. So we work with any UI that is out there, and for any non-UI type of application. So if you're doing any type of API testing, actually Tosca actually comes with an API executable on the ribbon bar. And in fact, you could take that executable and, you know, distribute it to your whole development organization. It's freely distributable, but it replaces tools like SOAP UI and Postman that developers often use. But the beauty of it is that, you know, they can hit a button and bring it into Tosca. And your QA teams don't need to be developers. They don't need to understand those API requests. So fundamentally, the way it works is that, you know, we scan your application, we build a model of your application, and we build these modules, and they kind of look like a Lego block. Okay, and you scan your application, and you have all of these modules, and you know, put them into a test case. So, you know, this could be an SAP application, it could be a web application, a desktop, you name it. It works exactly the same way. So within Tosca, we have this little utility that, you know, when it's launched, it takes a look at, you know, the application that you want to work with, and it has it does an interrogation of the technology, and it says, oh, it's HTML, or, you know, it's Java, it's a mainframe, whatever. And so the idea is that as a tester, you know, you're just going to click on the individual controls on the page, and you start to build out these modules or these Lego blocks, and you can go to the next tab or the next technology. And again, you know, you're building out these modules. And the next step really is quite simple. You create a test case, and then you drag and you drop the modules from the module tab onto the test case tab, and then you're going to add the data to drive the automation. And then in the demo, I'll show you this action, and we have several types of action, but input is really about, you know, anytime you're inputting information into your application. Okay. And so on the left is an example of a Tosca test case, and all of our Tosca test cases, I mean, SAP, web, you name it, they're all in a business readable format. Okay, so easy to use, easy to go from one technology to another to create the end-to-end testing. Whereas, you know, on the right is an example of our competitors or an older type of technology, script-based, that is, you know, very development-centric. You need to be a technical resource to be able to create this. And you know, over the 30 years that I've been doing automation, just managing the maintenance, you know, so what happens when you have an update, when you have a release or a patch in your application, or your application changes, you know, you need a technical resource to be able to go in, find it, update it. And, you know, I've been in a situation where, you know, I've added lots of comments to my code, because I've done that in the past. And still, you know, if I've moved on to another project or another company, you need another technical resource to be able to come in and maintain that. Whereas, you know, with the model-based approach, you know, everyone in the organization can start doing quality. You know, your manual testers, your BAs, your automation people love this, because in fact, you know, anything you could do in the scripting or the coding world, you can do inside of Tosca just by dragging and dropping. You don't need to be a technical resource, not at all. So how does that, you know, kind of relate to, pardon me, to SAP? So we have a very strong relationship with SAP, and part of the reason why they selected us is because we work so well with their entire set of applications, UIs and APIs, and it works exactly the same way. So, you know, you take the XScan utility and you scan a page, you click on the individual controls on the page, and it builds out this module. So you go to the next screen. And again, you know, you just click on the individual controls that you want to be able to create your test case. Okay. And you can go from, you know, screen to screen, and you're going to build out all of these modules. And once you have enough modules, you're going to start to build your automation. And these are your test cases. And so you're going to create a test case, and you're going to drag and drop these modules, and then you're going to add the data that's going to drive the automation. So step one is, you know, create a sales order. Step two, click enter. Step three, enter header data, and so on. Okay. Just for fun, while Mike and Allison were talking, I created a test case in and around your website. So just to kind of show you what I did is, it actually took longer to create this slide than than it did for the automation, and that's just a kind of a testament as to how easy it is to use Tosca. So here's just a screenshot of the application that I tested, and I clicked on a bunch of the links, the Ardagh metal packaging, Trivium packaging, and then you had some icons in the middle of your page, and I selected those. And then what I did is I just started to drag and drop some of these modules along with some of the standard modules that come with Tosca. Okay, so we have one that says, launch a URL. And so I just changed the name to navigate to Ardagh, and then I maximize the window. I wait a second. And then what I did is I clicked on or hovered over some of them. I didn't want to go too deep for today, but I hovered over, and really that was just to validate that, hey, I can read this page, no problem. There was nothing on the page that I couldn't click on or I couldn't interpret. And so I selected just a few of these, and then I dragged and dropped another standard module that says, hey, close the browser. And then I gave it the name of the application, and I just put Ardagh on there and saved it, ran it, and worked like a charm. So just to kind of start to wrap things up a little bit, you do not need to be a technical resource to use Tosca or ECT. And we have seen, extreme automation rates with our ability to test, all of those different technologies and be able to go from, one application or one technology to another, and to be able to, pass even information from one application to another. It's really easy to do. Also, just having that ability to create test data on the fly with PDM, very powerful. And I'm not going to say that, there's no maintenance to do inside of Tosca. There is, because if your application changes, you need to update your test cases. But the beauty of Tosca is that you update the module, okay? And all of the test cases that are associated and linked to that module automatically get updated. So you can be up and running very quickly, okay? So in terms of, what we support, I've been with Tricentis now for about 3 years, and anything and everything that I've seen worked on so far, we've been able to support. And so in terms of, open source technologies, we work with everything under the sun there. Your HTMLs, your .NET, your mobile type of applications, your JavaScript, your Angular, PHP, desktop type of applications, we support that. And of course, a lot of the packaged applications, your SAP, your Oracle, your Dynamics, Salesforce. We actually have, this one is interesting because, pardon me, we have an AI engine that scans an entire Salesforce instance in about 90 seconds. We're able to work with PDFs, ServiceNow. And the beauty of it, again, is that, when you learn how to scan an application, and again, you're just going to, open your application, you're going to launch the XScan, and you build a library of modules. And it's just that easy. And then as your automation starts to mature, Tosca comes with a CI agent that allows you to kick off your Tosca test cases as soon as the new build is ready, if you wanted to do it that way, or perhaps using our test management tool. And you can have the results come back into any of these tools. You can have them come back into Tosca. You can have them come back into Qtest. It's really up to you on how you want to do that. So 1 or 2 more slides. I think 2 slides left. Sorry about that. So all of the SAP UIs and APIs we work extremely well with. And this is the last slide.
Go back to the other slide.
Yeah, of course.
So what about the all in the cloud? So can you actually do integration with the cloud platform, what they call BTP now, and SAP?
SAP,
it used to be called the SAP Cloud Platform, and I think it's called BTP.
BTP.
Business
It is transformation. Yeah.
Okay. If it's a cloud application, we can test it. I mean, it's just going to be HTML or HTML5 or something like that, or like a UI5.
Yeah.
UFI.
It's
Yeah.
UI5 and yeah, and
Yeah.
Fiori. Okay,
Yeah, no problems at all there.
okay.
And
So when you
then,
say contested, does it mean integration? Because that's just a portal, right? Ultimately, it is integrated with SAP. So any test scenario we can create as an end-to-end.
yeah, of course, absolutely. Yeah.
I think what Sham is trying to say is that we got a portal that we develop, a customer portal that is actually running on the cloud, SAP cloud platform,
Right.
that has highly integration with our backend system and uses all data and obviously have a front end for UI5 and some cascade style sheets, etc. But it's all within the platform of SAP. And has obviously connectivity with the backend. And we would be very interested in actually be able to do end-to-end scenarios and making sure that data in our backend system is updated properly, etc. Right?
Yeah, yeah, and that wouldn't be a problem. I mean, we could, easily create the test cases for the UI5, and then, directly test the backend database, however you wanted to do that, either through a UI or an API or database calls. I mean, however you can imagine testing it, we can do it.
Okay.
I know it's, it sounds incredible, and it is. I mean, I was a developer and an automation engineer for years, and my life has just been made so easy since I moved over to Tricentis and started using Tosca. Yeah. So last slide, I think Allison talked about this. So we do have a couple recording mechanisms. And so, Aura is one option. And so I guess the ideal situation would be, if you have a BA or a business user who doesn't necessarily want to be able to create, Tosca test cases on a full-time basis, give them Aura. And, what they can do is they can just record a scenario. And so the idea would be is you just would have one application on their desktop, and they start recording, and everything that they do, all of the data that they enter into the SAP application or web application, it will capture that. And so then once it's done and saved, you can send that over to the QA team. And what they can do is they can merge that with their existing set of modules, or they could play it back as is. But I think, with kind of the model-based approach, we would want to merge it with the overall, regression tests and stuff like that, and be able to just, if there were new modules created or a new test case created, you'd want to be able to run that on a cadence. But yeah, it's
So this automated recording assistant, so it basically runs on Windows. So you run it on your
Yeah. So Tosca itself needs to be run on a Windows desktop, laptop, and as long as we can connect to the application, the cloud, desktop, web, mobile, no problem. It works exactly the same way.
So it's getting recorded in your client, right? So you log into a PC. Okay.
Yeah, you got it. Yep, you got it. Yeah.
All right.
I know we're out of time, but while we're taking any questions, I can maybe just kind of show you what we did here. So this was just a smoke test that I created for you guys. So I have kind of a library that I use that just goes and kills any browsers that I might have open. But this was the test case that I created. So I just dragged and dropped this module, and then I just put in the URL, and then I maximize the window, and then I wait a second. But then I just, I scanned the page, and there was lots of stuff on the page, but I just picked, some of the main links just to make sure that it was all working. And it was just, kind of easy breezy. So I'll run that in a second, but if we do get to a point where we're going to do a demo for SAP, one of my colleagues created a UI5 test case for me and sent it to me. So I just imported it. I've got some Fiori apps. I typically do a, order to cash type of demo for SAP. And yeah, happy to do that for you as the next step, or whatever you want. So I'm just going to launch this test case. So It's going out.
And Mark,
It's-
we had a hard stop at noon.
Yeah.
We want to
yeah.
make sure that the folks on the line are willing to kind of hang out for another 3 or 4 minutes, or
Oh,
is it-
30 seconds. It's done.
Yeah, I think we are over time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you guys. I know everybody is probably going to jump off very soon or already jumped off the call because people are booked back to back, right? So